Yeah. So we do have Dina as the bottom hand part of your screen right now. She's in Team Select, so we can see her 6 Pokemon. Again, those are the Urshifu, the Alolan Marowak, the Serena, the Hatterene, the Amoonguss, and the Talonflame versus Fiona's team of Lapras, Talonflame, Raichu, Urshifu, Serena, and Duraludon. So interesting that we have 2 Serena and 2 Urshifu here. But other than that, the team compositions are pretty different. I think Lapras is sort of the Pokemon that stands out to me the most on Fiona's team, having access also to its Gigantamax form and access to that amazingly powerful G-Max move that can set up both the light screen and the reflect at the same time. And depending on what kind of Lapras this is, if it's running something like a weakness policy versus a light clay, I think that's really going to dictate how this game moves forward. So best of luck to both these trainers, and it looks like we're jumping into the match.
Yeah, exactly. And I also want to find out which Urshifu these players are running, whether it's the Rapid Strike or the Single Strike. That's always a little bit of a mystery until it's revealed in the game. So that's always a nice bit of anticipation. But jumping out on the field here, there's a Duraludon and a Raichu on the right-hand side. And on the left, you have got the Amoonguss and the Hatterene. And this is where things get really interesting. Hatterene usually likes to be paired up with Indeedee, but hey, it's been banned. It's not here anymore. So Fake Out from Raichu can cause a few problems.
It can, and that Duraludon as well is going to be a huge issue for the Hatterene. Duraludon has the Stalwart ability, which means that its attacks cannot be redirected. So unfortunately, there's only so much this Amoonguss can do to protect its partner. And going back to when we saw Dina on stream in the previous round, that's really what you want to do with this setup. You want Amoonguss to use Rage Powder. You want to redirect any threats away from the Hatterene so that it can set up Trick Room and then immediately go for the Dynamax. But looks like the Hatterene won't be going for Dynamax quite yet. I believe this is a Duraludon and not the Gigantamax form, which is what I was expecting to see for some reason.
Well, it's normal Duraludon jumping out into the fray, and I think it's a really interesting type interaction between Duraludon and Hatterene, where they've both got moves that can hit the other for super effective damage, and that can always be a little bit problematic. So Hatterene just going on the defensive here, knowing that it cannot be protected from the Duraludon by the Amoonguss. Fake Out going into that protect as Duraludon goes for a max lightning here, actually going to target down into the Amoonguss. Really like this play, even though it does very minimal damage. It stops the Amoonguss going for anything like a Spore, thanks to the electric terrain now being set out on the field as well. Even if the Amoonguss has decided to redirect around, then it would have been able to catch something on the switch in. But I think the thing that's interesting there is Raichu does not have Lightning Rod, Gabby.
Raichu doesn't have Lightning Rod, and that's exactly what you want, actually, for this setup. Traditionally, I think Raichu and Pikachu have been seen as Pokemon that are primarily there to be disruptors and redirect any electric-type attacks away from its water-type partners. But now that electric terrain is so useful in the format, I really like this adaptation of running something like Static instead.
Well, Raichu going for the nuzzle here into the Amoonguss, just trying to slow it down even further than the Slowdown Mushroom already is. But critically, I think getting that paralysis, again, if there was a switch, because Amoonguss is kind of useless here, would have been able to slow down one of the partner Pokemon. Hatterene going to be taken down to 1 HP from that Max Steel Spike, saved by its Focus Sash. Again, really interesting item choice there on Hatterene. It does get quite a diverse pool of the items you want to pop on it. The Berry, Life Orb, sometimes even a weakness policy. But the Focus Sash is definitely the optimal item here because it can survive that Max Steel Spike and get the Trick Room up. Now, Hatterene probably is going to be the Dynamax Pokemon, but at least the speed's kind of on that side of the field to the advantage.
Yeah, Hatterene gets 1 attack in, and I think that'll really help just whittle down this Duraludon and potentially break a Focus Sash on the Raichu on Fiona's side of the field. But I really like this Hatterene. We saw it in game 1, or excuse me, in the previous round against Gemma do so much damage and so much work. But giving it the Focus Sash, like you said, really opened up the option for it to set up Trick Room against this Duraludon, even though normally this would be a really unfavorable matchup for it. So even though it's not going to be the Dynamax candidate for Dina going through this game, I think that getting the speed up or Trick Room up is exactly what it needed to do, and its partners in the back will be able to go on the offensive thanks to it.
Well, Amoonguss getting paralyzed, leaving Hatterene free to go for that Dazzling Gleam. Not going to be doing too much damage to that Duraludon at all, as Amoonguss will have to take that Max Worm, where it does a huge chunk of damage. Leaving Hatterene actually here on the field. Raichu went for the Helping Hand, knowing it's going to be really, really slow, but having that priority means it's still going to be of effect in the match. But I think, honestly, if you're Duraludon here, you're really sitting pretty because both these Pokemon aren't going to be Dynamaxing. You can just try and start picking up some KOs.
You can. And what's really interesting to me as well was that helping hand play. You know, I was almost expecting the Raichu to go for something like a Nuzzle to try and pick up the KO on that Hatterene. It only has 1 HP left, and every single turn it's on the field at this point, it's just going to be consistent chip damage for Dina and really give her Pokemon in the back, again, as much of a chance to succeed as possible. The one downside to this is that, you know, the Trick Room turns are whittling away, and it's possible that Fiona is choosing to target down that Amoonguss just because she knows that the Hatterene can be knocked out at any point in time, and maybe it's more beneficial to continue stalling out Trick Room. But that Hatterene's not going to be at 1 HP anymore, that's for sure.
That's true. It gets a little bit of a HP boost thanks to the Pollen Puff. Can do enough damage to nearly take Raichu down to KO range, but Duraludon able to hang on and be able to fire off attack into that Hatterene, picking up the KO. So at least this does give now the opportunity for that free switch, maybe to try and make use of those last couple of Trick Room turns, but you know, it's difficult when you're now at a two Pokemon disadvantage here, and Raichu safely jumping off the field here, maybe trying to wait until Trick Room's over. It can come back on, go for that fake out, and be back in a speedy terrain once again.
Yeah, you have to wonder what Dina's last two Pokemon are. In the past, we've seen her bring Serena and Alolan Marowak along with her in these matchups. And honestly, the Alolan Marowak would be a really interesting Dynamax candidate for her. Does have access to Lightning Rods, so she can stop Nuzzle from really causing any issues on her team. Can do some super effective damage to the Duraludon and, you know, threaten the Talonflame well enough. But the issue that Dina's going to have, I think, going forward in this turn is honestly the fact that given it is the Serena and the Alolan Marowak, that Talonflame is at full health. It does have access, presumably, to the Gale Wings ability and can go immediately for a Brave Bird into the Serena for some really big damage. So even though she still has access to Dynamax, and this Marowak definitely threatens 2 out of the 3 Pokemon we've seen her reveal so far, I think that it's going to be a really tough match because all this Talonflame has to do is go for an attack into the Serena, and it's most likely going to bring this down to a 1-on-4, which is a very hard game to play, especially when you're a Pokemon that's a little bit on the frailer side, like an Alolan Marowak.
I mean, it's definitely a little bit awkward for that Talonflame, where you want to be able to deal as much damage as possible, but you have to watch out for any potential abilities there with the Serena as well, stopping any priority. But we just don't know until it's revealed. Like in this tournament, there's been so many interesting little nuggets of change going through, and Marowak Dynamaxing up here as well. You know, that's been able to be preserved till late into this match. The Brave Bird, though, however, going to come out into the Serena, does actually manage to pick up the KO here. Solid damage there coming out from the Talonflame. We'll have to take some in recoil naturally as well, as Marowak goes for that Max Phantasm, going to target straight down into the Talonflame. But I think it really did do its job there, being able to pick up that KO really, really strong and just protect from that side of the field. And now you're just facing down that Marowak. You can really find some ways to target down. And Draco Meteor here, obviously going to lower the special attack of that Duraludon, but there's Pokemon that you can just keep switching in here and chip away at that Marowak, and it can only target single target.
Exactly. And honestly, the fact that we didn't see the Queensley's Majesty on that Serena was really surprising. I mean, it's kind of funny that I was sort of talking like it wasn't going to be there. I honestly forgot that it was an ability. No, I knew. I totally
You totally knew.
But you have to wonder what other ability is there. I mean, looking at Serena as a Pokemon, it does have access to Leaf Guard and an ability called Sweet Veil. So I don't think we can really make any determinations this game as to what ability that is, but that is a really great piece of information for Fiona as we sort of tidy up game 1 and move on into game 2.
Yeah, Marowak going to do its best here, going for a Nulla Max Phantasm, targeting right down into that Duraludon. And I think I might have just missed it there, but I feel like the Raichu went for that helping hand, so actually not going to be able to do anything. And ultimately, if this Raichu doesn't have anything other than electric type moves, it's going to really struggle against this Marowak. So this is where that kind of end game situation gets a little bit dicey, but Urshifu, a Pokemon, whether it's Single Strike or Rapid Strike, is going to be able to have a super effective move against this Marowak. So things looking a little bit more troublesome for Marowak now.
Exactly. And Trick Room just expired as well. So the Urshifu definitely going to move first. Surging Strikes without the helping hand would probably have picked up the KO at this point, but you might as well go for a little bit of, assurance or actually, excuse me, Wicked Blow. So that is super effective. It does still get the critical hit, and that is unfortunately one knocked out Marowak. So really well played there by Fiona. I think the Trick Room was kind of scary to face down, but the fact that the Talonflame was able to pick up the KO onto that Serena was really the turning point, I think, of this game. Just making sure that you were able to, play around the Trick Room, play around those threats of the Pokemon, stall out the number of turns that you needed to ensure that your Urshifu can come in and pick up the KO. Just really well played there by Fiona.
100%. I think abilities were actually quite critical in this particular match. Obviously, it was really brave of the Talonflame to go straight for that Brave Bird, but potentially with Sweet Violet, I think would be an optimal one maybe on that Serena, just to kind of provide some extra counters to Amoonguss and things like that. Could be quite optimal, and I think it's quite brave risking that though, because you just don't know which ability it's going to be. But the other ability actually I want to talk about is the Stalwart ability on that Duraludon. Because I was thinking, oh wait, it can't be a Lightning Rod Raichu because hey, the Max Lightning didn't get redirected, but with Stalwart ignoring any redirection, it allows Duraludon to safely go for those Max Lightnings without worrying about the Lightning Rod redirecting it. And I mean, that's just an animation we don't normally see. It's often a bit of a goof when you go for a Lightning move next to your Lightning Rod user, a Lightning move and electric move. So yeah, it was quite interesting seeing that interaction happen. And I think that's something that in this best of 3 situation, you have to take note of in a game 1 to take forward into the rest of the set.
Yeah, lots of really good information revealed. And, I think it's also interesting that you called out just abilities as something important in general in this matchup, because I think as we go into Series 6, we're going to see more and more of these abilities sort of come into play. A lot of times, I think with the Pokemon that were popular in previous series, their abilities were kind of straightforward. Grassy Surge sets up grassy terrain. Togekiss can either crit or flinch. I'm trying to think of another one. Clear Body blocks, stat drops. But now that we've kind of removed the simple yet powerful abilities from the choice of Pokemon that you can bring into these games, it's interesting that we are starting to see these interactions, knowing that Stalwart ignores redirection not only from the opposing side of the field, but from your partner as well. That's huge. What is Serena doing on Dina's side of the field? We don't know yet. I think these are going to be really key things to pay attention to as we go not only forward in this tournament, but forward in this series as well. In terms of adjustments, I think Dina cannot go with Trick Room again this game. I feel like it just did not work out for her. And unless she has a different way to set it up, I don't think that this is necessarily her game plan for this game too.
Yeah, I think the Hatterene definitely struggles in this matchup, so I wouldn't be surprised to see it being dropped from the lineup here and bench for this game too. And it's going to be a Talonflame and Urshifu jumping out on the left-hand side, and then again that Duraludon and Raichu lead, which was so strong in that game 1. And again here, you've got the awkward situation if you're that Talonflame. Fake Out's going to break your Gale Wings. You obviously don't want to take any electric-type moves as well. So it's whether you risk maybe trying to get that Tailwind up, or if you're maybe going to go for a Protect here.
I don't know. It's a tough call. I think that right now Urshifu does have the benefit of speed on its side, but that Raichu could easily go for a Nuzzle and, paralyze it and then take that away. So maybe you go for the Tailwind for a little bit of assurance there, or alternatively, maybe you just try and KO this Raichu before it can, use Nuzzle and otherwise slow down your game plan.
Exactly. Well, it's going to be right out the starting blocks again for the Dynamax. Duraludon here going to jump out into the fray. And I think, again, in such a strong position, you can go for those Max Lightnings, working around that Lightning Rod. I love that interaction. It's like my new favorite thing. It's amazing that you can target down that Talonflame. It's actually gone for the Quick Guard. So no Fake Out going to be working in this particular setup, which is good that the Raichu has gone for Nuzzle instead, going to be breaking any potential Focus Sash on that Urshifu and critically paralyzing it as well. Duraludon going to go for the Max Lightning, followed up, actually just leaving that Talonflame alone on the field. That would have been an optimal opportunity to go for the Tailwind in hindsight, but actually capitalizing on that Talonflame, maybe trying to play a little bit safely and defensively and picking up a strong KO against that Urshifu. I think that is such a great play. Urshifu is such a concern.
Yeah, exactly. Urshifu is honestly the biggest threat on Dina's side of the field. That Talonflame could only do so much that turn. And the fact that Dina thought that the Raichu was going to go for a fake out and went for quick guard, and Fiona just recognized that she could simply knock out that Urshifu with a little help from the new dynamic speed changes and a paralysis from Raichu, I think really just was this very strong read turn one, very well played by Fiona, and really leaves her to have a really good setup moving forwards. Now, the Alolan Marowak on the field means we most likely won't be seeing any more electric attacks from this Raichu, at least. Obviously, the Duraludon could still go for it, but it's not going to be its big damage dealer at this point in time. But Fiona still has 2 turns of Dynamax on that Duraludon. It will be faster than the Alolan Marowak and has access to Max Wormwind, which is going to deal a ton of damage and lower the attacking power of this Marowak in general. So still a very strong position for Fiona. Dina needs to find an opportunity to pick up some KOs real quick if she wants to tie this game up.
Yeah, the Raichu really limited on what it can do with the Lightning Rod user on the field. Going for that helping hand, though, into the Duraludon. Marowak, however, going to go for that Max Quake straight away, targeting down into the Duraludon. Does a huge chunk of damage, takes it below 50%, but not enough to be able to pick up a KO, meaning Duraludon is still going to be in this match. Talonflame getting up the Tailwind as well, just allowing the speed to be on that side of the field. I think it's interesting. It was like a Trick Room game 1, Tailwind game 2, and Talonflame will be going down to that Max Wormwind, as well as lowering the attack of that Marowak. And I think this is where things now get a little bit interesting, because we don't know the full set of that Duraludon, and sometimes they're known for running a dark type move as well, something like a Max Darkness, particularly with a helping hand boost, is going to do a huge amount of damage to that Marowak. But even at -1, due to the damage that Marowak already did, I think Duraludon is in a really dangerous position.
It is. And knowing that the Tailwind is enough for the Marowak to outspeed that Duraludon is huge. It really depends on how the Alolan Marowak is trained in its speed stat. If someone decides to commit to Trick Room entirely and run maybe, the minimumest possible speed to make up a new word. I don't think that's necessarily possible. So this is a really good indication of how this Alolan Marowak was trained prior to going into this tournament. I think that the Duraludon in general is just a very common counter to Hatterene. So this is most likely something that Dina's prepared for and said, yes, you may be able to knock out my Trick Room setter, but at least I have this other way that I can sort of handle your team.
Oh, Raichu as well, being nice and nimble, dodging out of the way of that Power Whip. Marowak still going for another Max Quake into the Duraludon, and it is enough to pick up the KO. I mean, the attack stat of that Marowak is always huge. Even at -1, it's still going to be able to pick up some KOs. And getting that special defense boost up as well is just going to help out potentially against some of the opposing Pokemon. But I think the biggest thing here is this Raichu is just completely locked down at the moment. There's nothing it can do other than clap its hands and cheer. It's a bit like the raid battles when you're knocked out, you come and you cheer. That's all that Raichu can do here. And Talonflame joining the field, again, can apply so much pressure to that Serena. But the biggest problem I think here is definitely that Marowak. Dina can just ignore the Raichu and KO the Talonflame.
Exactly. So it's really going to come down to, I think, what Fiona's last Pokemon is in terms of how this game is going to be played out. We know that the Raichu can only helping hand. We know that the Talonflame can attack. It can attack either the Serena or the Marowak, but most likely will target the Serena for the easy knockout. We saw it get that KO easy back in game 1. So whatever Pokemon Fiona has in the back needs to have a favorable matchup against this Marowak, and we'll just have to wait to see what that Pokemon's going to be.
Well, helping hands a piece from Serena and Raichu, cheering up their fire-type Pokemon here. Talonflame going to go for that Brave Bird, so targeting down into that Serena once again, just wants to remove it from the field, doesn't have to deal with it anymore. But I feel like Talonflame is just the really obvious choice here for the Marowak. And again, this is just where Raichu isn't going to be able to pull through against Marowak in the end. The Max Phantasm going down into the Talonflame, going to lower the defense as well, but it really is just a clapping game now for that Raichu. And you need to start thinking about, how else you could get through this.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the Pokemon that Fiona brought with her, on her team, it's possible that this last Pokemon is going to be that Urshifu once again. And we saw that Wicked Blow deal so much damage in that previous game. But it's a little bit different right now because the Tailwind is still up on Dina's side of the field. If this Marowak is able to outspeed that Urshifu and pick up a KO somehow, just deal a nice big amount of damage, pick up that knockout, it's Marowak versus Raichu, Marowak wins. If Urshifu is able to, stall for time, maybe protect this turn, stall out the last turn of the Tailwind, and then move first and go for the Wicked Blow, it's going to be Fiona's game. So really, really close. All comes down to speed.
Oh, I mean, that's the ticket. Urshifu in the back really is turns for the Marowak, coming in with that Sucker Punch as well. Phenomenal there. Urshifu basically being the savior there, coming right in and also going, hey, I don't care what the speed tiers are. I've got Sucker Punch. I'm going to outspeed you. Super effective damage. Hey, Raichu, give me a boost as well just to round out the match in style. I mean, Urshifu just really came down at the end there and was just completely victorious.
Yeah, and that was great prioritization by Fiona, knowing that as long as the Serena was gone from the field and it was down to a 1 versus 2 situation, knowing that she had access to that Sucker Punch and that helping hand would be enough to pick up that knockout, just very well played by Fiona. I think that Dina gave it her all in this game. Again, it was a very tough matchup. Duraludon is not really the Pokemon you want to see on the opposing side of the field when running Hatterene, but just a really phenomenal team. I love that the Marowak was able to outspeed the Duraludon with the Tailwind or the Trick Room, depending on whichever one was active on her side of the field. That shows such amazing foresight going into this tournament, and I'm sure that we'll be seeing more of her in the future. Because again, really well played. But Fiona just showing that she is still in the running and just she has such a good commanding of the game. Knowing that Lightning Rod and Stalwart would interact in that way, saving that Urshifu for the end with Sucker Punch. Just played the game very well, played the information very well, and I am so excited to see her move on into top 8 because I really want to see more of this team.
Yeah, she really won in commanding fashion, but honestly, huge commiserations there to Dina as well. She had a phenomenal run in this tournament. It's a shame to see her go out, but she made such great progress in this, and she'll still be really proud of everything that has been achieved in this tournament.